Hello, welcome to an hour of information about ZIMO. I founded the company a little more than 40 years ago in this building in Vienna, Austria. At this time, ZIMO consisted of one room in the third floor. And here, two part-time people and myself manufactured three product types: a command station, a cab, and a receiver. How decoders were called at this time. In the meantime, ZIMO uses most of the building and a little part of the neighboring house. Today, we are one of the leading suppliers of digital model railroad equipment in Europe. Our decoders, most of them sound decoders, are factory installed in the locomotives of several major manufacturers, among them the brands Rocco, Fleischmann, Bachmann or Hornby. In case of Bachmann, it is Bachmann Europe, not yet Bachmann America. ZIMO currently has 40 employees, 11 of them working in software development and hardware development, including two people who mainly do sound projects. We are present at the most important model railroad exhibitions in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and France, mostly with our own booth, partly represented by wholesalers or specialized dealers. Sometimes, until now, but in future probably more and more, also in the United States. ZIMO is located in Austria, a German-speaking country, but the non-German speaking rest of the world is just as important for us. An example, we deliver 16% of our total production to UK, the United Kingdom alone. One ZIMO's big difference to almost all other digital manufacturers is that we have our own production facilities. This is not such important for making 50,000 HO sound decoders. This also could be done with external subcontractors, but it is necessary for offering a large variety of products. ZIMO has about 100 standard decoder types, and we also make many individual solutions for locomotives with limited space or special requirements, some of them in rather low quantity. Our commitment, the right decoder for any need, and much more than just decoders. This was a very brief look at the company ZIMO. Just as important for you is our partner for distribution in America, Trainli in Reno, Nevada. And with that, I'll hand over to Axel Tillmann from Trainli. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Axel Tillmann and I'm the founder of Trainli. Today I'm playing more a background role and enjoy how wonderful the team actually drives the company forward. I would like to tell you a story how Trainli was actually founded, and that is important because today we also speak about ZIMO DCC Control. Initially, I was building my own layout and found many different insufficiencies that I could not personally deal with, such as bending track. And I found through my research a dual rail bender from Switzerland in real Swiss quality, and this was the foundation which we sold at Trainli now over 3,000 times in the US alone. The next problem was how to power your layout. And there's many different variants out there, but if you really analyze down to the root, then you will actually understand that a decent site layout can only be controlled by digital command control, where power and control comes through the track. Once I had made this decision, I had to solve two problems. The control problem, meaning the central station and the handheld, and the decoder problem, what comes into the engines. Initially, I had one engine without a decoder and one had a built-in MTS decoder, which, by the way, was never built by LGB. It was a product from Massot. I can only tell you that I was highly disappointed to run the MTS decoder. And subsequently, I found this true for almost any decoder in the market, because ZIMO was impressing me already at the time. And we are talking about nearly 20 years back, how smooth the operation actually was and how well the engines behaved in relations to the prototype. So now, after I have solved that problem, I was actually now looking into the control central station and handheld, and even at the time, ZIMO won that game hands down. So that's how I approached Dr. Ziegler, founder of ZIMO, whether he has an interest in additional distribution inside the United States. And that's how we got together. And I do not regret this decision, because if we look back, today is even ZIMO the leader in the DCC market. And you have any questions to the subject matter, Christine in our shop does an excellent job in explaining and giving you all the ins and outs. And even if your budget does not allow for a ZIMO central station, although we do have a starter set already, we have two other options for you that still keep you on the pathway to ultimately upgrade to a ZIMO central station if your budget or your layout grows. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and the company is ready any day you like to talk to them.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Tillman, for that introduction and history on both ZIMO and Trainli, and how Trainli became involved with ZIMO. This morning, in a couple of minutes, I will connect with Alexander Meyer at ZIMO, and we will talk further about DCC and some of the ZIMO products. What I'd like to do is briefly talk about what DCC is. DCC is a standard that was defined over 30 years ago now by the European Union of Model Railroaders and the National Model Railroad Association. That standard has been adopted by all major manufacturers of DCC systems. DCC stands for Digital Command Control, and it is, again, a set of standards that has been adopted by all of the major manufacturers, allowing a cross-compatibility. This means that any decoder will work with any DCC system, allowing us quite a bit of flexibility. It is also, it was defined originally to simplify control of your model trains, allowing multi-control or multi-train control with a digital system via 2 wires going to your tracks. Whereas before, using an analog system, you would have to have hundreds of wires and hundreds of track sections to have that same level or similar level of control of multiple trains on a single layout. So that's what's really exciting about DCC. You know, I've heard a number of different comments and statements and beliefs about DCC, and that it's very complicated and difficult. But I'd like to show you through this video and future videos that Trainli is producing that it really isn't as complicated as people make it out. And a lot of these things that people talk about, oh, battery's better because I don't have to run wires or I don't have to keep my track, is you know, some of that is a little bit true, but it's mostly myth. So if you give me a minute or two, I will be connecting with Alex in just a few minutes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alexander Meyer, and I'm working for ZIMO in Vienna, in Austria since now 2016. And I'm in charge at ZIMO for a lot of things, of course, but also decoders, documentation, conventions, and testing, of course, also systems and decoders also. And at the last, I'm responsible also for sound projects at ZIMO. First of all, I want to have cited two of our system modules or command stations for first thing. I want to talk about the command stations being the MX10 and the smaller brother, so to say, the MX10 EC.
Okay.
Both, as we said before, DCC command stations, of course. Having the bigger one, the MX10, an output of 20 ampere. That is the highest output ever, so to say, we have on the market. And so this system is, of course, very useful for large-scale layouts or garden layouts, so to say.
Yeah.
So huge motors, big locomotives, huge layouts, that's perfectly fine fitting for that.
But you can also adjust the MX10 down to be able to run your N scale.
Right, that's the very interesting part. There's a lot of possibilities of adjustment, of course, down to an N scale layout as well. So you don't damage your small locomotive, small motors. So that's really very, very adjustable, so to say. The small brother of the MX10 is the MX10 EC, and in that case, EC stands for economy. But that doesn't mean that that's a bad a bad module, so to say. In that case, it only stands for the fact that you have a one-track output instead of two-track outputs.
Okay.
And instead of 20 amps, you have 12 amps on this one output. So it's still a very strong partner.
Still very good for even running all the way up to large scale.
ZIMO will offer probably this year a new throttle or handheld called MX33 with a touch screen, bigger touch screen than the old one. Some new features also. So this will be coming up probably by end of this year.
No, that sounds really exciting. I know because I'm using an MX32, which is the older style handheld. And I really like the handheld, but unfortunately, it's aging and it's no longer in production, is my understanding. So
yes, it is. We stopped production of that one, and there's a little gap, so to say, between the two. But on the other hand, if you want to go ahead right away now, then you can use an app on your mobile phone, of course, going through a router. So router connected to the MX10, that's possible. You can use any app you want to for
so I could use like the what is it? The Roku app is the most famous app.
Probably Roku app or whatever apps. And there is a news also that we are going to offer an app as well to our clients, probably also by, I would say, fall of this year, probably.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So you will get some images of that and even a small video from the app.
Yeah. I also found recently that with the current firmware for the MX10 and MX10 EC, that I can actually also hook it up to JMRI and use Wii throttle through JMRI to run my trains on an app.
Right. So there are some possibilities either with JMRI or with other apps in this way. So it's quite versatile at the end of the day.
Which I think is actually really cool. And I know I know for Holly McLean's layout, because of the volume and size of his layout, and then there's obstacles like buildings and trees and rocks and stuff that get in the way of the radio signal for the MX32. We've shifted over to running his layout pretty much exclusively off of the using the Roku app. So some of the other things let's talk about. We've kind of briefly touched on the systems. We should talk about the maybe some track modules and or the decoders too.
Yeah, well, the track model, talking about the track model, this is called Stein. So it's the stone, as we call it. Makes a little more sense in German, of course. It's a stationary model, a module, as we call it. That means it's one in all module for your layout, for your track sections on the one hand, for switches, as well as also lights, for example, or even, what do you call that? Sorry, ouch. Signals.
Signals, turnouts. It's my understanding that it basically what's meant by track module is that it allows to it provides block detection. It has the ability to control turnouts and lights, and then with that, with each of the blocks in that, you can use ZIMO incorporates what's called HLU.
Right, exactly. So this HLU is more or less a higher level ABC, as we call it also here in Austria and in Germany, and it's a lens product in that case. But HLU was invented by ZIMO from probably 20 years ago already. And you have the possibility, let's say you have works on your tracks. Mm-hmm. Imagine that some small workers are working there, and so trains shouldn't be running that fast. So you just change the HLU level for this track section. And in that case, of course, trains coming in are slowing down to a certain speed and speeding up at the end of the track section. Or there's a track section, of course, in a station. And of course, in the station, you're not going full speed. So trains are coming down automatically and even stopping before the red signal and going off afterwards, of course, again. So it's very versatile.
ZIMO offers the ability for the end user or the user who's driving with ZIMO to be able to learn and expand themselves and their layout with ZIMO by including things like the track modules to do automation, versus a lot of systems which are much more basic than ZIMO don't really allow automation. And then if you want to do automation with those systems, you have to build and add on to them. And ZIMO is already there, just based off of an understanding and use of the systems.
Right. So we are incorporating, so to say, the Macs for your hobby, of course, on the one hand, but you don't need to use it all. So you buy it all, of course, on the one hand, and you start with just connecting 2 wires to your layout just to drive 1 or 2 trains. And then one day you end up with a huge layout, all automated, and well, that's fine also. You don't need really extra things for that.
So then, and with the ZIMO, it allows you to flex the flexibility to be able to do both at the same time. You can do automation and take over and drive a given train.
Exactly. So we're having both possibilities, knowing on the one hand that in Europe, we're dispatching trains on the one hand, And then we just look at them and look at the layout, and things are just going there automatically or semi-automatically. In the US, it's more the driving. So the driving place the model takes. And that's something we are offering with our throttles, of course. And with a lot of features we're offering also in the decoders.
Yeah, yeah. So let's move from the track modules into the decoders that is offered. We have both the MX and the newly introduced MS series decoders, and let's talk about the difference of those decoders.
Yeah, well, the MX decoder is quite well known now for the last 10 years. We have models with sound and models with non-sound, just driving decoders, so to say. These will stay in our program, of course. The MX 600, very simple, very basic decoder, very cheap decoder, or others. So the non-sound will stay in our program, and the sound MX decoders will swap or will be swapped to the MS sound decoders. They are new. They are better, of course, than the old ones, that's clear. They have a 16-bit sound, so 44 kilohertz means it's CD quality, what you're hearing.
Wow.
On the one hand, hi-fi quality. And the second thing is that they are able to be driven under another protocol that is called MFX from Märklin. So that's also possible to drive on Märklin layout. And this module is called MX-ULF or MX-ULF. This little device is, at the end of the day, it's a little central station, honestly. You can not only make your updates and load sounds or connect it to the PC, but you also can use it as a standalone central station for one address or one vehicle only, of course. But you can test your vehicle, you can run it, you can test up to 8 functions also. So you can do a lot of things with this also.
Yeah. And the ZSP also will run through the MX10. The only problem with it, as I've seen, is that you still cannot actually fully load a sound project without the MX-ULF.
That's right. So it's only the MX-ULF that allows to load the sound projects. There are 2 possibilities loading a sound project. Either you load it through the tracks, so to say, or through track connection, or you can load it also through SUSI connection. In that case, it's much quicker, of course. For a normal connection, it would take, let's say, an hour to load a project, and using SUSI, it takes maybe 10 minutes. Yeah. The same project, of course. Yeah. So much quicker.
And then I know on the large scale decoders, they have a little port that you could just plug directly into. And I know then on some of the smaller scale decoders, if they have the plug on it, like the decoder in your background there, that has the SUSI that you can plug into a test board, I guess is what you would call it, for the decoders.
Right. We have test boards, of course. And if you have a Plux connection or an MTC connection or an X connection, so these 3, they have also the SUSI connection on board on these pins. And so you can just plug it in and then you load your project very easily. So that's very, very simple to do, of course. I would say stay alive, let's call it like that. You could imagine either just capacitors, tantal capacitors, or even in some cases, supercaps. You just directly put into contact with the decoders. So there are several possibilities. One is let's say a small capacitor, about 1,000 microfarad. The other possibility in some decoders is the direct connection of supercaps that have a much larger capacity, of course. There is another new small PCB called STACO that is regulating, so to say, all needed electric circuitry to put any supercaps you wish to. We are offering, of course, also directly also to the decoder. Or at the last possibility is to have supercaps on board the decoders themselves.
Much like the 699 series.
That's quite right. The 699 already was a model role. Sorry, the 699 was a role model for that. So we're doing exactly the same thing for the MS990 and the MS950. We have 3 supercaps on board, and really after cutting the current, you can drive quite a while with these supercaps on board.
Oh, neat.
So it's a very important topic, so to say, for ZIMO to offer these possibilities because of well, not all layouts being this how should I say, well cleaned and proper and tiny and tidy and everything.
Even
and,
with
well,
especially your garden layouts. I know a lot of people in the US have these are very pro battery power in their locomotives, and just I think in our talk maybe we've shed some light on the ideas of what you can do with DCC in the garden versus just running on the battery. And you don't, and there's again still many misnomers that, oh, you have to clean your tracks and you have to run all these wires and it's complicated. And again, as we said a little earlier, DCC is actually very simple in the basis to set it up. You use literally 2 wires going to your track, and then with capacitors and the power that the ZIMO offers, you just have to, you have the ability of running your trains off of the capacitors for a short period of time over maybe a little segment of dirty track. And you really don't have to have your track absolutely spotless.
That's the point, and that's why we are just really putting so much work in these capacitor stores, because we believe that, well, railroad should be fun and not work.
Yeah.
And it should be fun to have your trains running properly and to have a nice sound that is not always interrupted because there are some small sand particles or whatever on the tracks. I mean, this is normal, this is nature, and this shouldn't bother you in this way. You should have fun and you just should concentrate.
Wasn't that LGB's motto?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, more fun than working on it.
Right, right. So it's really an important issue for us, and that's also the reason why we are offering all such a huge, how should I say, a huge possibility span, so to say, you can choose out of, and you just pick out the right thing for you and the space you have, of course, also.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that wonderful conversation, Alex, on ZIMO and the different ZIMO products that there are. I hope that at least answers some of the basic questions for people with regards to ZIMO, and realize that ZIMO may be new in the United States, or at least new to you, but ZIMO as a company, as a whole, has been around for a little over 40 years now, and have been developing a really phenomenal product. It offers any number of different possibilities that you can work with it, as well as well over a good 100 decoders of that are suitable from your smallest locomotive, your smallest N scale locomotive, all the way up to your G-scale locomotive without any hassles. And the system can also run the same without, again, any major hassles. ZIMO does consider themselves as a technology company. And with that, they are always striving and always attempting to improve upon the technology and improve the fun that you can have with your hobby. Well, thanks again for watching. And thank you again to Alex, Mr. Ziegler, and Mr. Tillman on their insights and so on. I will be available after this session in a Zoom breakout room to answer any questions or continue the discussions. And as I said, we at Trainli are actively working on developing more tutorial videos, more introductory videos talking about the different DCC systems that we have and our lights. You should take a look at our webpage at www.trainli or Trainli, which is trainli.com. And stay tuned. Thanks.